Hello folks and welcome to today's Tipcast with myself, Shane Stapleton, joined as ever by the head of sport and Nina Guardian, Shane Brophy, and Killian Whelan as well, who does plenty of commentary in GA and ladies Gaelic games. How are you getting on, Shane Brophy?
Good, and yourselves?
Not too bad. Just start off with yourself, Shane, then. What were your thoughts on the weekend? Tipperary getting the job done in the camogie semi-final?
Yeah, no, really, I suppose after probably the nervy first 15-20 minutes, I suppose maybe a small bit of staleness maybe after Kilkenny game. Antrim probably been very cautious in how they set up, and Tip were slow to get going, but I suppose once Tip got going, like, they were very, very impressive. I love the ruthless streak there was about them. Like, even when they had the game won 5 minutes into the second half, they never relented. Like, and girls coming off the bench and really staking the claim for hope for games down the road. So you couldn't be but impressed. Like, and look, they're in a lovely position going into the semi-final against Waterford, but at the same time, when the draw was made, Tipperary would have wanted Waterford, but Waterford would have wanted Tip. So, like, I think it's there for both teams. I think Tip will be favourites, but I think Waterford are a team that have to be restricted and have enough threats. And look, they were semi-finalists last year. I know we'll probably talk about that next week or previewing the semi-final. But look, just in terms of Tip, they were mightily impressive, particularly in the second half.
Yeah, and Killian, we'll come back to Tip in a second, but the other game between Cork and Kilkenny was a bit of a rip-roaring one as well, and there could have been an awful scandal at the end if Kilkenny had been given a free to equalise, considering Cork had been denied 2 cast-iron penalties.
Yeah, you could even say 3, Shane, I think, because there was definitely a penalty, I think, before the second goal went in. There's no question about it that Saoirse McCarthy was fouled as she, was in on goal. She got a nudge in the back. She went down in the square. Next thing, everything just stopped, and she gets up and realizes, I still have the ball. I haven't been pulled for a penalty, and she hand passed the ball back, and Katrina Mackey put the ball in the back of the net. So to me, yeah, there was 3 penalties that should have been considered there. I'm always one that feels I don't want to criticize officials, because it's the job is getting tougher. There's no question about that. When you see some of the events that happened at matches in recent times and so forth, people are. I don't know what it is. People are getting fierce, angsty, and even more so, I think, on sidelines and things like that. But God, I just can't understand why referees can't get more help, because firmly believe that I don't know whether there's a future for Hawkeye, Shane, that maybe this is another big kind of talking point. But I do think that a VAR or something like that needs to come into the sport, especially in hurling. I just think there's so much going on now in matches that there definitely needs to be a scenario. Do you mean to tell me that John Dermody couldn't be told there within 3 or 4 seconds, here, John, you missed the jersey pull, that's a penalty, and just run straight in and give the penalty? I don't think there's any situation that couldn't be looked at going forward, but that's probably getting off the point.
I just coming back to that there, I would think, before we go that far, I do think we've got to go down the lines of soccer and empower the linesmen or the assistant referees. Like, okay, John, particularly the one at the very end, the penalty, like, it was pretty obvious, but like John Dermody was probably in the middle of the field. He was probably the Kilkenny goalie was probably blocking his line of sight. He probably couldn't be sure what the Kilkenny goalie was doing, but her body was probably in the way of her hands. But the 2 lines persons who were side on would have been able to see
there's a great angle, Shane. And again, as someone who's umpired on the side of a post, an umpire doesn't have a whole lot of power, even though people seem to think that he does, No,
but I think particularly because most linesmen and women are referees. So, like, this thing of a second referee and like, you already have 2 referees on the line. Like, just give them a small bit more power. And I know that there's this crap of you're demeaning the authority of the referee. Like, when there's particularly at inter-county level, when you're appointing officials, particularly the referee and the 2 lines people, you're appointing a team.
Yeah.
Like, and I think they've got to work at a team. I don't like. I'd hate to think that referees are going out there thinking, God, I don't want to be undermined by the lad on the sideline. No, you're working as a team. Like, and you're all there to help each other. Like, that's the way I look at it.
Well, you wonder then, why are they all mic'd up? Because especially when they get to the big matches, I know in Croke Park, they're all mic'd up. So why I think it was Aaron Hogg was on the Cusick stand side. Why couldn't he just say to John in his ear, John, I think that's a penalty. You need to have a look at it, or go in and consult your umpires or something.
Just wave his flag rigorously like they do in
Absolutely.
soccer.
Yeah,
he can give in the signal through the mic. After spotting a foul here, jersey tug, penalty.
But like even in the game between Kilkenny and Clare, which is obviously on after one of the camogie matches, the Cork and Kilkenny game, there was one stage, and nobody can tell me differently, but there was a contested line ball. It was given one way. It came up on the screen, on the big screen, and it was very, very obviously a Clare ball because it had flicked off, touched off, I think, Mossy Keown last.
Yeah.
You can't tell me that the referee didn't make his decision based on what he saw on the big screen.
Yeah, he changed his mind, definitely, didn't he?
Yeah. And the amount of time it takes for a referee to go in and chat to his umpires, could that be so much different than a quick little video review? Why he's going in and doing that, talking to his umpires? Surely, like, someone over the video set could just say, hey, look, that was clearly decision X or decision Y, Killy.
Oh, no, I would agree.
I'm sure a little bit. I would hate to think too much will be. I'd hate to see ever too much go to VAR, but maybe little things like that where you have somebody watching say, "Oh, quick look, okay, that ball goes the other way." I'd have no problem with that. Like so.
Okay, well, look, Killian, let's come back to the match between Tipperary and Antrim, and it was very comprehensive, 323 to 6 points. But I think it was only like 5 points to 4 or something like that during the first half when I was watching. I can't remember totally. Tip then went 10-5 ahead, and just a point for Antrim in the second half. Why do you think Tipperary struggled in the first half? If you're to look at the overall scoreline, why was it so tight in the first half?
I just think it was the setup of Antrim. Elaine Dowds came obviously down with the fact that they didn't want to be, concede too much in the first half. I think that was a big thing, that they want to be competitive as possible. The fact as well that they put Roisin McCormack and Katrin Dobbin out on the half forward line was a big factor, that they wanted to kind of try and win their primary ball and get a few scores and get them on the play and contest with Tipperary as much as possible. But once Tipperary kind of got a handle on that, Antrim were dropping back a seventh defender or an extra player anyway as well. And I think once Tipperary just got a handle on that, they started to get into their groove. And I would imagine as well at halftime, 10-5, Dennis was probably got them to realign a little bit. I don't think he would have been too upset or annoyed about things. Probably just expected them to go through their game plan and just follow through. And that's what happened. And I just think, Antrim are a team, I think, that will have a say in the championship in a few years. They do have a certain, and I said this on the podcast last week, they do have a good foundation there going forward, and they're in a healthy state. I just think they probably conceded to Tip rather than play their own game as such, and that then meant that once Tipperary found them out, they didn't have anywhere else to go. And the problem was then is that, Katrin Dobbin is one of the finest corner forwards in the game. She got 1 point and it was from a free. Roisin McCormack is a fine player. You could play her anywhere and she was effective, but she was snuffed out. And the reason they were snuffed out as well is you're playing probably the best half back line in the game, at the minute. Now, I don't know if Corinne had picked up a knock or something like that, but she Clodagh was in there, but there was all sorts of changes in the Tip defence there. But when you've Karen Kennedy and Aoife McGrath anyway, and that 2/3 of that half back line, they just snuffed out then the danger women for Antrim. And Maeve Kelly being a bit of a loss, I think, as well for Antrim this year. Had a cruciate and came back, and I think was just held up a little bit by injuries. She would have been someone else then that maybe Tip would have had to keep an eye on. Once they got a handle on, as I said, on McCormack and Dobbin, I think there was only ever going to be one winner. And I know on the podcast I said here, 6 points plus. I was thinking it was going to be a big score. I probably just leaned a bit that it wouldn't be as big as that. But Tip were impressive, and I think they enjoyed the open field of Croke Park and expressed themselves a lot. And great to see Cot Devan. I think Dennis has managed that. The player management there, I think Dennis has done this year has been fantastic. Kat didn't play a whole lot in the league and was only, in and out at certain points. And I think he was using the opportunity to give other players confidence and everything like that. And, Kat then, she's like, I suppose, a heifer out now on summer grass. She's just bouncing around the place at the minute and, is on top of everything. And, she just like you just got to see some of the scores. She took the one over her shoulder on the Hogan stand side, the goal, knowing she couldn't catch it, and she just batted into the corner. Like, those are things that you just can't coach. You know, the Cot, we know for years, has just the skill set that has been coached since she's about 2 or 3 years of age. I'm sure knocking it around back in the back garden at home. You know, just a phenomenal player, and she's probably somebody you would love to see win an All-Ireland, because she's just been there at the top of her game for a last number of years.
Yeah, she, like, some of the strikes she had, any man would be very, pleased with some of those scores, the two that you mentioned there. So the skill set and the wrists on her, unbelievable. And after the game, Dennis Kelly said Cott made a big contribution. She got 2-6. But look, she can't do that unless she's getting a good supply of ball, and she would be the first to say that. Tip teams used to depend fully on Cott. If she was held in the game, you were bet. This team isn't like that. There are scores coming from other sources. And if you look across the team, Casey Hennessy, Roisin Howard, Caoimhe Maher, Emer McGrath, Grace O'Brien, Clodagh McIntyre, and then on the bench, Courtney Ryan, Caoimhe McCarthy, and Emer Heffernan, especially, but 1-3. Like, Shane, there were scores coming from everywhere, and there was good play coming from so many players.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, it was especially I think that the dynamism of the Tip team is something that definitely is come on an awful lot this year. And I think even in the space of a couple of months, like I would have seen Tip play Cork in the league back in February or March, and I think it was only a point in it, but I thought Cork were way more dynamic than Tip. Like, they moved the ball so comfortably, and I think Tip have caught up in that regard. I definitely think they're able to play both ways now. Particularly if they Tip, they're a lot like maybe the men's team. If they get in behind your half back line, they're smelling goal all the time. Like, they're carrying it forward. Like runners, Caoimhe McCarthy carrying the ball, Ciara Maher or Caoimhe Maher carrying the ball. Casey Hennessy is very athletic in the middle of the field. Like, and then you have finishers. Grace O'Brien probably had a quiet day by her own standards, and then like Cott is just an outstanding player, and like it's great to see her, I suppose, getting the bit of the limelight. Like, she's been there for so long, but she's been on a lot of maybe Tip teams that maybe didn't have the resources around her. Like, she was having to get the lion's share of the scores, and it was too much on her shoulders. Like, she still scored heavily now, but they're not overly reliant on her, which is great. Like, so like they're really building there's a fantastic panel they've built there, like over the last few months. Like, you've got 32 of a panel, and like, you think that there's probably one or two, like the junior team are going well. You think maybe next year a couple of that team will progress up. Like, and there's just a feel good factor in the county. The under 16s are in an All-Ireland semi-final against Galway next Saturday. The minors are in the Munster final in 2 weeks' time, I think. So I think the All-Ireland series and the minor is over. Like, so, but like there's an awful lot for Tip to play for over the next few weeks, and like it's I suppose it's an opportunity really for the camogie really to take the limelight in the county. I suppose it's been the guts of 17 years since Tip were last in an All-Ireland final. Like, they're not there yet, but 2006, 2004, like the last time they won it, and you think, God, it feels only like yesterday when that great golden era team was around and won 5 in 6 years. Like, and it's almost 20 years since they won their last one. Like, so time moves on quick.
Just Killian, like, if you look at the panel Tip last year versus this year, the obvious ones are Karen Kendi at centre back, who's a real Rolls Royce, and Teresa Ryan, who brings a lot of combativeness to the middle areas. But it's probably not just the two of them. What other differences are you noticing with Tip?
Well, I was a big fan of Bill Mullaney. Myself and Bill had great chats, and he's such a likable character and a great element of the way he wanted Tip to play. And I don't think Dennis has changed a whole lot, but I do think I think the strength, the physicality of the team has probably gone up a notch. I just, as you mentioned there about the combativeness of Teresa Ryan in the middle of the field, there's just a little bit of hardness about them. I think a little bit this year. I don't think they're going to be as easy beaten or knocked off the ball or anything. And I'm talking about players as well that always would have had a little bit of an edge to them, but they just seem to be even that little bit more stronger on the ball. I'm talking about Roisin Howard. I just think Roisin has been doing an awful lot of selfless work that probably hasn't been picked up. Grace O'Brien as well, a diminutive little character, but by God, I wouldn't like her to be snapping at my heels at all. Like, she just gets stuck in and is prepared to. She's a bit like a terrier, she's snapping around your ankles there, just looking to be involved. And can be a match changer as well. I think Casey Hennessy as well, her form she's shown has been huge also. To me, Shane, there doesn't seem to be a weak point on the line. The fact that you lose one all-star goalkeeper and you're able to replace it with another is phenomenal scenario that Tipper in. But Anya Slattery, there was nothing wrong the way she played in Croke Park the last day, and that the defensive unit, the forward unit. I just think there's a lot of things going right for Tip at the moment. And I'm not trying to blow smoke up them at the minute or anything like that, but like they seem to be very strong on every line, and when you have 1-5 off the bench as well, surely Dennis is going to be in a scenario where Emer Heffernan is going to be kind of having a little word in his ear during training and saying, "Come on, Dennis, I might be worth a chance in the shirt." And you Courtney Ryan, Caoimhe McCarthy, they all come on and chipped in a bit. So they're like, it's great to think that he just doesn't have to worry about the 15, that he's probably got 22 players really out of 32 that are going to be, giving him a few headaches, let's say, in the next while before he picks his team for Nolan Park against Waterford.
Yeah, and there was a lot of scores that Tip left behind him early on in the game, Shane, and to be fair, just restricting Antrim to 1 point from playing the entire game is very impressive. But if you go back over the results that Tipperary have had against some of the big teams, the regular challengers this year, can you just talk about why Tipperary shouldn't feel like there's any inferiority complex despite not making it through to a final, as Bill Mullaney came so close to in recent years?
Oh, definitely. I do think while I don't think we're hyping them up. I do think we're giving them credit for what they've done, and I think it's something they've got to, I suppose, just take it. Don't try and push it away and say we're still building. Put it on your shoulder and accept it and use it as a positive and drive on. It's like I would have looked at the last 4 that's there. I don't think there's anything to fear in what's left. Look, they beat Waterford comfortably in the Munster semi-final back in May, but look, that's nearly 2 months ago now, and you go back 12 months, Waterford gave Tip a bit of a trimming in Semple Stadium, and I think it was the curtain raisers of the Munster senior hurling final last year. That shows you how there's probably nothing between those teams. Cork, I don't know, for all Cork's talent, they allow other teams to stay in the matches. I thought they were a good bit better than Kilkenny last weekend, but yet they were hanging on for a finish. I know maybe big refereeing decisions probably prevented them from being more comfortable, but they still needed Ashling Thompson to come off the bench just to maybe get the thing right, or just to steady the thing down. And in Galway, I don't think we've seen Galway fire at all this year. They did have the big win in the group stage of the championship against Cork, but I'd say it's you probably think at this stage like Galway, just with their experience and their quality, are still probably they're the favourites. But I'd say when the draw was made, Cork were probably the last team Galway would have wanted to draw at this stage.
Yeah, Killian, do Tip have anything to fear?
Well, yeah, there's enough in Waterford for you to be kind of keeping an edge in training over the next 10 days, Shane. There's no question about that. You have a team there that is led straight from the back with Brianna Regan in goal. Her puck outs can land on the far 20-meter line. She's a phenomenal puck out. Iona Heffernan at full back will be a big cause. Lorraine Bray, she's a phenomenal player. Equivalent, I think, of Karen Kennedy, if you're looking from a Waterford point of view. And then you move into the forwards, of Abby Fitzgerald, you've Niamh Rocket, and of course Beck Carton. Beck Carton on her day would stand head and shoulders above any player that a lot of other counties have. So there's enough there, Shane, to be keeping Tip on their toes. It's not going to be easy. It's a Munster derby. It's in Kilkenny. And I think in a way, Waterford have nothing to lose in a great sense. They're in the final 4 for the second year running. They don't have a huge weight of history. I think it's so long ago since the All Ireland final. You're talking about 1945. I don't think there's a pressure there to qualify or anything like that. There might be a little bit more pressure on Tip, just the way the year is going for them and so forth. So Waterford could be lying in the grass there a little bit, spotting an opportunity. The thing you might look back as the Munster Championship, that when Tip got going in that game, they just put the foot on the neck of Waterford, and they didn't let it off. And I think that's maybe what Tip might have to do. They may have to go for the jugular area and just make sure to keep the pedal to the metal all the way to just ensure they get that. The only thing you might say is Waterford this year, have won a National League title. Again, a team that have been tipping along there, changed their manager, a lot of people would have felt that there was a strange take with Derek Lyons, everything that he achieved in the latter stages last year with them. But they've changed their mind, won the league title, and have come out of a group that, when you look at what happened Antrim against Tipperary, they also had Limerick and they also had Offaly, and they fairly put them to bed early on in their game. So the challenge would be is that Waterford maybe haven't faced a stiff enough test going into this Tipperary game. That would be the only thing if you're looking at it from a Waterford point of view. But yeah, there's enough there, Shane, that I'd be kind of thinking you just can't take your eye off this.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a fair journey since last year, Shane. Like, I remember watching that game and seeing how completely dominant Waterford were.
Yeah, no, I watched that game as well, and I said, God, have Waterford come on and have Tip regressed? Like, so I think there's no doubt that Tip fell back last year. And look, Claude Quirk was injured, Karen Kennedy was injured. Just things looked a bit stale last year, but I think Tip are a completely different team this year. And like just to go back, like that Waterford match a couple of months ago, like Waterford beat Cork the week before in the Munster quarter final. Maybe they came into that semi maybe thinking they were better than they were. They were probably on a little bit of a high. Just were not focused, and Tip blew them apart. It was a 4-11 to 1-9. But I did think that that day was still a very spotty Tip performance. I thought while they were comfortable winners, they weren't smooth, and then they came out, I think, the week later against Clare. Got to maybe one thing with Waterford is they were in the semi-final last year. They were probably the better team for Cork for long spells. Maybe a bit of inexperience down the home stretch came against them. Maybe the management have Waterford primed to peak around this time, and I think we'll see a better Waterford team than we saw in the Munster semi-final. And no, look, Tip will have to bring their A game to beat Waterford, and I think they do. I think they will beat Waterford, but there's absolutely no way they can be taken for granted, and I don't think Dennis Kelly won't allow that to happen.
Yeah, and Killian, it's no harm for Tipperary that it's not too long ago having, even gotten to a stage of playing at Nolan Park and getting a result. You talked to us about it last week.
Yeah, well, I think the cards are falling a nice way for Tipperary, but you got to make some of your own luck as well. I just think that they've already had a run out in Nolan Park, and the fact that they haven't lost there as well in recent memory, I think that buys them well. They'll know to set up the dressing rooms and all that kind of thing. I don't know whether Waterford have been there in Nolan Park too recently, so that could be one little bit of an advantage. But hey, look, it's a Munster derby. It's being played on one of the finest pitches in the country. It's an All-Ireland semi-final and a chance to get back to Croke Park for an All-Ireland final that either team haven't been in a while. So that this could be really helter-skelter stuff. It could potentially be the better semi-final, potentially, because I do think there's going to be a bit of nerve and everything like that in it that's going to, throw players off or whatever, and that adds obviously to the tension and the excitement of it. But I just think there's a little bit of steeliness in this Tip team that I don't think they're going to maybe capitulate like they may have done in recent years, just when the finish line was appearing. So I just think there's a certain amount of drive there this year that I'm really impressed with.
And Killian, who would be your sort of player of the year nominees at this stage? And of course, there's semi-finals and finals, and that's often where they're decided. But who do you think is best positioned at the moment?
Did you really put me on the spot? Look at if you're looking at it from a Tip point of view. Karen Kennedy has just been phenomenal. To come back from the injury that she had, and she's probably, if it was possible, she's gone up a notch. I think that players sometimes can come back off an injury and it can obviously play on their mind, and you nearly allow them the following season that they've bedded back in and whatever. Karen has just driven on to high level again, but she's just you mentioned a Rolls-Royce player. There's no question about it. So to me, yeah, if Tip make a final, she's going to be in the hunt. There's no doubt about that. She's definitely a standout. Roisin Howard, consideration maybe there as well, given her impact, and I think Cott now is really shown in the All-Ireland quarter-final, semi-final and final for her. She turns up on the big days. She gives big performances. From a Tip point of view, she'll definitely be in the hunt. If you're looking at, from a Cork point of view, there's been some big performances from the likes of Amy O'Connor. Fiona Keating's gone about her job very, very quietly, but she does it very, very effectively. Libby Coppinger has held it all together at full back. They probably would be three that I would be thinking. Probably haven't seen enough of Waterford, but again, the names that have jumped out in certain times would be the likes of Lorraine Bray and also Beck Carton. With Galway, you're probably looking again at Aoife Donoghue, who's been obviously a serious driving force in that Galway team. She just doesn't want to let go. Galway have gone through a bit of a flux there. They've lost, a few names. Some have retired, let's say. That hasn't been a whole lot made about it in Galway, but they've definitely lost 3 or 4 names that would be, you would kind of be saying to them, God, if they were going out tomorrow, you'd fear for any team against them. But they've been able to. It just goes to show you the work that they've done as well at the intermediate level and everything with their team. Cathal Murray has been able to, move players into that senior setup there very, very gradually and bring them in. And he hasn't been afraid to kind of, tell them to go on there and enjoy themselves. And, you've only got to look at maybe the Hanafi sisters, how, they've progressed in the last while. The McGraths are probably coming back into the fore. Siobhan probably wouldn't have had a great start to the championship, starting maybe to slip back into the old groove that we saw a couple of years ago. And her sister Orla is back as well. And I saw her getting the score sheet the last day. If those two get in and start clicking in the next couple of weeks or in the next, say, 10 days in training for Galway, they could have a serious impact on the Cork team in that semi-final. So there will be some of the names. I probably thrown out a lot of them there, but again, going back to Tip, I just think Karen at the minute is probably head and shoulders above any of the other 4 counties at the minute.
Yeah, Shane, do you see many changes for the final? And by the way, there was times I was looking at Karen Kennedy sweeping up and I was like, God, wouldn't you love to have her further out the field as well at the same time? But she's such a safe pair of hands, you can understand why she's closer to goal.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's I think Tip of such a scoring threat. If you you think that the toughest game in the championship, there was Kilkenny, they held them to 111, they held Waterford to 1-9, they held Clare to about 1-8, 1-9, I think, in the Munster final. They'd be very, very mean defensively. If Tipperary hold maybe in a team to 111, 112, you fancy them to score enough on the other side. So, you have to think that Karen won't be moved. He had, I suppose, Dennis has options, in terms of what way he wants to play. He can use Clodagh McIntyre as sort of an extra half forward and use her pace from deep and leave 2 inside, or he can, if he decides, okay, I want 3 in the full forward line, can start Emer Heffernan up there. And then you look at the subs, brilliant position now with Mary Ryan. You think if Tipperary are in the lead with 10 or 15 minutes to go, to have her experience to come off the bench, they've used her very sparingly. I think they've decided, look, that we'll need Mary later in the championship. We'll keep her fresh. And I think she's a sort of a de facto selector. I was watching the sideline against Kilkenny and she wasn't in the stand with her bib on. She was on the sideline with her bib on. So I think they fully respect Mary's knowledge and experience. And I'm sure she's the extra voice, maybe a de facto silent selector that we're not being told about. And Irina Friday has been very sparingly used as well. She's a class player as well. They're I think they're brilliantly set up. As Killian said earlier, 1-5 off the bench, Emer Heffernan and Caoimhe McCarthy coming on, making huge impacts. Kieran Maher got some game time. I know she's maybe struggling with bits of concussion lately. I think she's managed to come through it. So really well set up for the semi-final and hopefully beyond. And then just before we move on from it, I just think it's 10 days out now, and I think anybody who supports Tip Camogie needs to plan now that to be in Nolan Park. Don't just decide next week you're going to go. If you're going to go now, make your plan to be there, because I think it's something Killian, or I've seen a few people saying, I think Killian tweeted about it, that Camogie ladies football, they're getting an awful lot of pats in the back and support, but very few bums in seats. Your people's words are going to have to be, particularly Tip people now, words are going to have to be backed by support. And look, Nolan Park is not far to get to. I do agree that the semi-finals are better off out of Croke Park. Croke Park, while it might be a turn on for the players, it's such a turn off for supporters, bar a special occasion like an All-Ireland final, or maybe a curtain raiser to a big men's game like last weekend. So look, Nolan Park's ideal. Probably not ideal that the junior match is in Ashbourne at 12 o'clock. So you could technically make both. If I think it's 12 o'clock in Ashbourne, Tip are playing Roscommon, match is over about 1:30 on the road, you would get to Kilkenny by 3:30. I suppose county board officials will, maybe supporters will probably have to choose. But look, I just think Tip supporters need to make a plan to be there on Saturday week. I was watching the game on my phone actually in McDonagh Park Arena last Saturday. I had to cover a club game, and I was just remarking while the puck around was going on between the two club games that were on, the amount of teenage girls that were pucking around. I said to myself, okay, it's not easy to go to Croke Park, fine, but why aren't you at home watching them play? Like, did I not know Tip and were playing Antrim on the telly? Or maybe it's a thing that maybe young girls, maybe they don't mind having the male player stars as their role models, like the likes of Jason Ford, who was playing in McDonagh Park on Saturday. They don't mind having male role models over female ones, but still you'd like to think that if Tipperary were on the telly, which they're not rarely on, which they're not often on, that they maybe would have been home watching them. And I just think females particularly could do more to support their own code, if you know what I mean. Like, we need more men to bring their kids and all that again. We need all that, but like if females don't support their own code first, it's hard to pull everybody else in after that.
Yeah, Killian, just in terms of the double headers, and I was at both double headers, and I was at both camogie games, and there was nobody, there wasn't a sinner there really. Like, obviously there was a few people there, and especially with Kilkenny being in a double header, there were some there, but basically it was empty Croke Park for both sets of games. So I'm just wondering, like, as much as it's brilliant to play at Croke Park, and it really is, like, but what is camogie getting out of putting these games in double headers when it's almost even highlighting the fact that we've got a full stadium here for the men's game a couple hours after it's just completely empty for the camogie. So I'm just wondering, is this working?
Yeah, well, I can understand where Uachtaráin, Hilda Breslin and maybe the Cushion of Honesty are coming from, in the fact that with regards to camogie, that they see the opportunity. They were offered the chance by the GA, and I suppose they took it. They brought forward the quarterfinals. The quarterfinals were actually only supposed to happen this weekend, but they brought them forward because there was a chance there to go in as a curtain raiser. They probably were envisaging, maybe a different, let's say, quarterfinal than Tipperary and Antrim, and that it would have slotted in probably with the game that was taking place that day. They were fancying, obviously, Kilkenny would be somewhere, so that was always going to go with them in. Look, the Camogie Association, we'll keep knocking it because, but they're doing everything on a very strict and very string-like budget. So any opportunity they can to get promotion, I suppose, is a factor. But I do agree with you, Shane. What was the benefit of it? But I still call out, and I've done it on social media in the last couple of weeks, why aren't women going supporting women? I just don't get it. Because you're talking about girls that are playing for your club, and you're not going to watch them then playing for their county. I don't get that. And I see, in fairness, credit Thurles Sarsfields, I see in social media there, I think overnight, they've already put out a call, for their clubmates to go and support Karen in the All-Ireland semi-final.
Or just to have a supporters bus organised for theirs. Like, I'm sure other clubs
and I'm sure they are. Yeah. No, I'm sure there's others. I haven't seen it yet. But, like, Nolan Park isn't that far away. It is going to be on the telly. But can you imagine what it would be like to go to Nolan Park with 5,000 Tip fans in it even? Let's say, I'm not going to aim any higher, right? It would be phenomenal for the girls to think then that the crowd... And imagine, let's say, it's getting a bit sticky with 10 minutes to go and you have that crowd. I guarantee you Waterford will be doing something similar. It's 1945 since they've been in All-Ireland final. They're surely driving their clubs to ensure that every under-16 is being brought to that game. So you'd be imploring all those counties go. Cork and Galway... probably going to find it difficult to get support going because of where the location and the venue, and they could be holding their fire.
That's probably the mistake the Camogie made with the scheduling. I understand that Cork and Galway is the bigger game of the two, but in terms of crowd, Tip and Waterford is going to bring a bigger crowd to that semi-final. Maybe the Tip Waterford game could have been at 5:30, and it would have helped maybe the junior situation where it gives more time to get from one venue to the other.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do think that could have been factored. I suppose they did try and put the Tip game on first in Ashburn, maybe, to balance out. I think TV probably played a factor in maybe deciding some of the times as well. But again, I'm just going to, when I'm here because I'm on Tipcast, I'm going to implore the Tipperary clubs, you got to get out and support them. The lads are finished now. Tip have a great opportunity of getting to a double All-Ireland final. What a day it'd be in Croke Park if Tip were in both All-Ireland finals, and you'd be hoping the Tip teams come out. But I'm asking women to support women. That's what I'm looking for. At these games, and I've been at them, Shane's been at them as well, as regards, you would see 300 to 400 people. There's actually a lot more men will bring girls to matches. They'll bring their daughters to matches than you will actually see women bringing other girls to matches, and that's and that's not something I'll stand by that. I'm not, I don't think there's any issue with that, but I want to see women supporting women. I'm talking about the 18, 19, 25, 26-year-old women who are playing with these under club teams. Get out and support them. Come to Nolan Park and support them. The tickets are already on sale. The link went up on the Camogie Association social media yesterday, and as Shane said, start planning it now, to be there in Nolan Park to support Tipperary.
Okay, so look, let's move on to the All-Ireland semi-finals at the weekend. There, Limerick beat Galway. That finished up 224 to 118, so it was comprehensive in the finish, even though Galway started very well. And then Kilkenny 125, Clare 122. So that was a bit of a dramatic one. We'll start off with you, Shane. What was your take on the two games, and which impressed? Did any team impress you any more than another?
Kilkenny. I kicked myself. I said after the quarter final, I said I couldn't see Clare beating Kilkenny, and then before throw-in, I sort of went with Clare, and I said, why did I do it? I just walked into that one again. You don't doubt Kilkenny, and the big occasion, Clare just fall a that little bit short, and it happened again. And you just. Look, you can point to maybe the big refereeing decisions that didn't go their way, but look, with 20 minutes to go, they'd gone ahead, everything was with them, and then they give up the goal, and you just knew Kilkenny, once they got their nose back in front, they weren't going to let it go. And I just thought the big thing for me was, even with the Owen Murphy save, is the couple of points they got in injury time. Every time Clare got back to 2 points, Kilkenny won the next puck out and got the next score. No panic, Pádraig Walsh coming on, Richie Hogan coming on. This will go down to Kilkenny, and it'll probably be said, I'm fierce envious of them. I'd love for Tip teams to be playing like Kilkenny, just loads of talent, but their heart is absolute, and belief is absolutely massive. And I think they have every chance of winning this All-Ireland. If there's one team that will not bow down to Limerick in any way, it'll be Kilkenny. And I think Limerick are favourites, but I think Kilkenny are coming into this final in a much better space than they were 12 months ago.
Yeah, Killian, what was your thoughts on it?
Yeah, again, you'd have to credit Kilkenny, but I asked on social media, are Clare overhyped? On the big day, it's just not happening for them, and you wonder, is that fault with management or is it with players? To me, give up the ghost very early on, and I had to reel back in Kilkenny, and they were on a roll then, but they just seemed to stop. I don't know whether it took so much out of them to be able to get ahead against Kilkenny, but they just seemed to stop. It was nearly like, oh geez, we've made it here now, we've got ahead. It's going to fall for us, and the Kilkenny just kept chipping away, and the next thing they were back in front. And fair enough, Shane O'Donnell, great goal, no question about it. But again, it was like Clare, they just stopped, because I suppose it was a case in point that they weren't really in control of that game, I don't think, at any point. Kilkenny were nearly like they were tying with them, and there was a sense that they put the ball in the back of the net, and then you have a scenario where Kilkenny straight away were able to chip away a few points and put it over the bar, and you could just see Clare deflate visibly on the field, even after all that. So they probably felt, geez, we went to the well here, and it still wasn't enough. But I'm not sure about that. I would have question marks. I think Tony Kelly's a great player. There's no question about that. But to me, maybe are Clare expecting too much from him? Is that the scenario? Does one or two other players then, do they go missing on the day, and then there's so much pressure on Tony Kelly that you have that scenario happen? Then I don't know. I think he was well marshalled, but I do think on big game occasions he goes missing for me. I don't know, and that's maybe something that's going to be a slight against him going forward.
I did worry when I saw that free that was given against him incorrectly for Mikey Butler, and just his reaction, he said to me, this guy is flustered. This guy, Mikey Butler's inside his head now again, and he's going to struggle. And I just think
he reacted like that as well for there was another situation when there was there was another situation.
Like you've got to keep your emotions in check in these big. Like you never see a Kilkenny player losing their cool like that. It's look, and I suppose it's maybe it comes from the manager. Like I would have been watching like a lot of Clare games this year, and Brian Lohan, and he's up and down the sideline. It's a really old school management, getting lads riled up, and I'm sure it transmits its way to the players. And they're probably the team that plays hurling with that bit of raw passion more than a lot of other counties. A lot of other counties are very methodical and like to keep their emotions in check, stay focused on the game in hand. Like so, I did think that I think a lot was made in advance of Mikey Butler going on Tony Kelly, particularly how well Mikey had done it in last year. Look, he did it again. He held him to 2 points. He was, I think, he did set up Shane O'Donnell's goal, but if you were holding Tony to
2 points,
not dominate the game, like that's a win.
Yeah, no, great performance from Mikey Butler again. He's really been a player that they've found this year for sure. But like you look at Brian Lohan's, I suppose, managerial record in the last couple of years, and like the county's behind him, there's no doubt about that. But there is sort of an undercurrent of questioning him too because of what happened last year in terms of John Conlon was injured and the switch he made just didn't work out. He made the goalkeeper switch at the start of this season, and obviously that was somewhat profitable for Tipperary, getting a win down there, leaving Keane Nolan on Aaron Gallan as long as he did. I mean, the entire country was going, what are you doing here? And, you know, Keane Nolan, tough ball going in, what can you do? But, like, not making a switch. And then Shane O'Morey sweeping the other day, that just didn't seem the right call either. Yeah. So, Killian, there's a lot of people questioning what Brian Lohan has brought to it. You know, there's been good stuff, but there's definitely question marks.
Oh, absolutely. But I do think, look, if there's to be anything, and I don't think you're going to see Brian Lohan walk away or anyone look for him to go, I do think he's brought them on. There's no question about that. You know, at the end of the day, they've qualified for 2 All-Ireland semi-finals, and, you know, that has to be a feather in his cap. But I do think he's got to have a search with regards to some of the decision-making. Does he need a freshness in the backroom team? You know, some of the decision-making, I don't know, like, I think after about 15 minutes, you were wondering what Murray was actually doing. Like, surely that had been worked at training, and you know, it wasn't something that was just landed on the scenario. But like, he just seemed completely at sea with the whole thing, you know. And I don't know whether he, as you said, he was the right player for it. But they obviously saw something. They tried it out in training, and it must have particularly worked. But sure, like, training is one thing until you bring it into the white heat of Croke Park, and maybe not everything is not going for you at that moment in time. And then maybe he was a bit of a scapegoat in a way, but. When they started to play to their strengths, I thought, you know, they were getting on top. But to me, then ultimately it was probably too far for them to come back. And even though they did get ahead, then it cost them. You were just, I feel Tipperary Kilkenny need to be on the M9 and before you have them beaten. You know, like there's just they're phenomenal, Shane said, and even though you might say, geez, they're not as good as the teams were, you know, 5-10 years ago or anything like that, they just have something in them, the rawness or whatever that can come out in some of them, that, like, you look at Conor Fogarty, the run he made to get in there to cut off the goal chance, you know, and you're talking about this is in, the opening 20 minutes of the game or whatever, just goes to show you where Kilkenny were. Hey, guys, you can try all you want, you're not beating us here today. And again, as Shane said, when you can bring on Walter Walsh, Pádraig Walsh, who else did you throw into the mix there as well? Like Richie, sure, like, I know those guys are only going to be bit part, they're only going to probably play 20 to 25 minutes in a game, but you're like, still, they have so much experience at Croke Park that, you know, they could still work something on a particular given day. And as Shane rightly said, I think they are in the mix. And I know someone might be questioning there why you think they're in a better position this year. I just think there's a lot more solidity about them. I just think that those lads have grown into experience this year a little bit more. And, you know, Derek Ling might just be able to work the oracle with them.
Shane, have Galway made progress this year under Henry Shefflin?
No, I don't think they have.
Okay, last year they had an up and down Leinster campaign, got to the final, fell away the last 20 minutes, unimpressively beat Cork in the quarterfinal, and then give a great performance against Limerick in the semi-final. Up and down during Leinster this year. We're in a winning position in the Leinster final. You know, that can happen teams where you give away a goal, but still they give away a goal in that fashion. That's not great. Then what happened the other day as well, they capitulated after a fairly good performance against Tipperary, it must be said, the previous day. Won by 2, but probably could have won by 10. Yeah, so like with all of that in light, what are you seeing in terms of Galway moving forward and Henry Shefflin?
God, I'm not convinced he'll stay on another year. I think Henry's getting a little frustrated at the fact that an element of Galway hurling, and I suppose the fact that they've had all this talent for the guts of 30 years and they've only won one All-Ireland, and I think it's a mentality thing, and I think Henry is frustrated. I'd say he's beginning to frustrate him now, like that. I'm like he's coming from a county where they were mentally so tough and full of belief, and now he's in a county where they have as much, if not more, talent in Kilkenny, but on the mental side of things, they get a little flustered. And like we saw it in the Leinster final with the panic at the end with the goal. And look, I still think there was an element of panic with that second goal at the weekend. Like Pádraig Bannion shouldn't be flicking a ball like that in the square. Like somebody's got to get up to that ball and catch it, or somebody's got to call and say, mine. And there still was only a 1 point game at that side. I think as soon as that goal went in, I think Limerick would have probably still won it anyway. As soon as the goal went in, you could just see the air going out, and they were already taking on water. But I just think they're lacking leaders. Like Joe Canning is gone, David Burke, like he's probably past his best, but as a leader on the field, he would have been massive. I think they're definitely short a bit of leadership. There's no doubt about it. And they were definitely short a plan B last weekend. As soon as Limerick retreated and said, you can have the short puck out, but if you go long, we'll hoover it up. If you have the short one, we'll batter you in the middle of the field. Like it was like they weren't prepared for what Limerick were going to bring to them.
Yeah, James Coughlin is saying here, laugh out loud, Tip lads talking about Lohan being passionate on the line. Have you seen Liam Sheedy and Liam Cahill lads?
Did I say it was a criticism?
Yeah, and also the thing is, just because a Tipperary person might be passionate on the line, it doesn't mean that other Tipperary people mightn't be able to say, well, it doesn't work for Team X, Y, and Z.
I would have said Liam Cahill was very calm this year. Maybe in the Limerick game, I think that was definitely a game he really got fired up for. But there was a few games this year, like I would have thought Liam was calmer than what even when he was with Waterford.
Yeah, I just wondered just on that with regards Lohan, does it cloud his judgment then a little bit? You know, that's what I'm just wondering about. Does he get too into it that can happen? You know, Sheedy, gets passionate on the line, but you rarely would have seen him. Yeah, you rarely would have seen him make a bad call based on the element, because I do think he's a good team around him as well. That's a big factor in it. I'd have to question, if you're looking at Clare, I wonder how much of their backroom team can be able to rein in Lohan, you know, when things need to happen, to say, you know, Brian, here, come on, let's pull this together, like, and make a good call on things. I just wonder, and I think that might be a factor. Just quickly on Galway, I can't see Henry either, Shane, staying on. I just think he's probably scratching his head about how much more can he get out of them. I don't know. I saw that, you know, the inevitable was going to happen. You were crediting them, and you know, you would have been shouting at the television. It's not that I'm ranting against Limerick or anything like that, but you just fancied a change up and you wanted to see them, you know, really being taken on or whatever. And Galway were doing that, but you just felt it was going to happen. You know, there was going to be a capitulation or something. And I just wonder, has the Leinster final left a serious scar? You know, like when you think about that clearance, you know, in the Leinster final and close and say, to kick the ball back across the goal, it should have been left in the top of the tier 7 in Crow Park. Like, you know, that's as far as I would have thought. It should have been out that direction. Again, even Mannion, you know, the flick back. I know he was probably thinking it was two Kilkenny players. He probably saw them out of the corner of his eye on his right-hand side. So he was trying to flick it away from them. But again, you know, I would be thinking the basics. You don't flick the ball back across your own goal, you know. Could he have caught the ball? I'm trying to think about it in real time there. Could he? But again, some of the decision-making under pressure, just Galway at key moments, you know, this year didn't go well for them.
Yeah, Hurling 1234 says Cahill lost the head against Cork on numerous times this year.
The Clare lads get very defensive,
don't they?
Saying Lohan does, Cahill is worse.
Great to hear the Clare lads listening to Tip Boys, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, no.
Looking to learn something, true.
No, I do think for all, like, we know, I'm from Lura, like, I'd be very close to the Galway scene up along. There is a great rivalry with all the clubs up there, but I do think that Galway were at their best when one of their own as manager. I do think if Micheál Donoghue won the All-Ireland, like, for all his critics, Anthony Cunningham got 4 very, very good years out of Galway, got them to 2 All-Ireland finals. unlucky not to win the 12 final. Noel Lane got them to an All-Ireland final, I think it was 2005, I think it was Noel Lane, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, I think Galway County or one of their own has to be the head man, because I think there's something in the Galway psyche that you've got to tap into yourself. Like, Henry doesn't understand the Galway psyche. He's a Kilkenny psyche man. And
they're called the tribesmen for a reason, Shane, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And just a comment here, Ray Gilburn, Galway won All-Ireland in 14 seasons when they had one of the best players ever in the team. Canning has retired. It'll be years before he's adequately replaced and Galway will win an All-Ireland. It's hard not to think that Galway will be a couple of years now trying to rebuild this team, because there's some of those better players. Gerard McInerney, obviously, and look, to be honest, I think he was on a hiding to nothing with the ball going in, given Galan's footwork. David Burke, who you've mentioned, Joseph Cooney. Dahi Burke is probably hitting 30 now as well. So, Killian, it's difficult to imagine that Galway will challenge for an All-Ireland next year and the year after.
Yeah, again, obviously their underage setup, they'd always be there challenging as well. So you'd imagine, they're going to be able to pull something out of that. But there obviously hasn't been anything in the last, say, 2 years, 3 years that Henry felt that he could progress from minor or under 21. So, that would be something that might be a little bit of a worry for Galway. But yeah, I think Henry is probably going to think, I'm going to leave this aside now. I think he'd probably reflect on it in the next couple of weeks, and Galway probably need to go through a bit of a rebuild. Honestly, I think that there's players, one or two definitely are in the departure lounge. There's 3 or 4 others that are not far away from it. So I think Henry might be thinking here, this might be too big of a job for me to do. And I agree with Shane. I do think the tribal element of Galway hurling, they probably need one of their own there to be able to go in and just cut loose, essentially, and maybe have to end the career of one or two of them as well, and just make some of the hard calls. I'm not sure Henry is going to be up for that.
Yeah,
I would think one of their best minor managers the last year, Jeff Lewinsky, and why would you not give him he probably knows that underage scene as good as anyone in the county. He knows what's needed to be Henry. He's probably
gets as many clubs, so he knows every college player.
I think whatever politics goes on in there, when you think about it now, wasn't it utter madness to let Liam Donoghue walk away? When you think about it, you got them an All-Ireland with utter madness. That you give him what he wants. When you think about it coldly, it was absolute lunacy to let him go.
And he's not going to leave Dublin after one season if it's a thing that Shefflin. It just, in terms of PR, I don't think it'd be a great move for him.
Yeah.
James Coughlin says, I'm not Limerick nor Clare, and I'd watch or listen to anyone if it's hurling. Keep your enemies those stats. Okay, well, look, Killian, you've been absolutely brilliant with your time. Really appreciate you joining us, and hopefully we'll be doing it again soon.
Okay. Cheers, thanks, lads.
So there was plenty of hurling going on in Tipperary over the weekend. As you mentioned, you were in at some of the North Championship. I suppose we'll start off with the game that you were at, which was Bursley. We might actually start off with Kildangan against Roscrea. Kildangan had a very comprehensive win there in the North quarter final, 2-19 to 10 points. And, we'd been kind of talking about Kildangan coming into it because they don't really have anyone outside of Barry Hogan in with Tip this year. They very much have all hands on deck. So they've had a great chance. Normally, it'd be late in the season when they're getting a chance to rep what they're going to do. They've had full season to do it.
Yeah, no, I think that was comprehensive. I think Kildangan, they'll have been pleased to get the win. I think they'll feel, it was maybe a 6-7 out of 10 performance, no more than that. They hit 17 wides. It didn't gel for them fully, but it was a very spotty game. Roscrea hit 18 wides, 35 wides in the game. It was just littered with. It never got into a flow. You think a team was going to get on a score and run, and then they maybe hit 3 wides or 4 wides in a row. And look, it was definitely a sort of a somber day for Roscrea. They sadly lost their PRO, Fiona Phelan, to illness last week, daughter of 1971 Tip All-Ireland with the captain Tyg O'Connor, and we send her our sympathies. And I suppose they would be hoping maybe, if not to get a win, maybe get a good performance just to lift the mood a small bit, but they didn't get that. Like Luke Cashin, who we've seen last year, and he rarely missed a free for Roscrea in their run to the Munster final, intermediate final. I think he missed 4, if not 5 place balls last weekend. Okay, there was a breeze there, and it was a little bit tricky, but he missed frees that he would have thought he could get. And I just thought, from Roscrea's point of view, I thought the setup maybe too defensive in the first half. Alan Tynan went back to the half-back line, Darren O'Connor sweeper, and then they played 4 and a half forward line, leaving one inside, which is Shane Fletcher. And like when you set up that game plan, your passing has got to be spot on as you're working the ball up the field, and that didn't happen like so. And look, Killadangan were ruthless enough going the other, efficient enough going the other way. I think they'll know they have to find a little bit more, and it was sufficient for them on the day. But like they're playing Borrisoleigh next Sunday in the semi-final, and they'll have to find more, because like I was very impressed with Borrisoleigh now on Sunday when they played Kilruane.
Yeah, and just in terms of Killadangan there, is there anyone that really stood out? I know you gave Billy Seymour man of the match. He scored 9 points, 4 of those from play.
Yeah, no, Billy at centre forward, like I thought just physically looked very, very lean and trim. Like I hope he has a big year, because like it was like we saw what he did in the 2019 All-Ireland under 20 final. So you're thinking like he has the armory to be a very, very good forward. Just consistency maybe he struggles with. So look, I'd be hoping he has a big campaign. I thought it was interesting that they've moved Joe Gallagher from the half forward line back to centre back. Now Joe would have played an awful lot of his juvenile hurling at centre back, so it's a position that he's very familiar with. So particularly because Alan Flynn was so slow good back there, but they've decided that we need Alan's maybe athleticism in the middle of the field. And look, he and Ty Gallagher were tremendous as a pair, like 6 points in play between them. So Killadangan are probably looking, okay, we maybe get some long range shooting out of these two and use the likes of Billy Seymour, Paul Flynn, Willie Connors maybe inside to get the close range shots. Like Sean Hayes, quite enough game, only finished his goal very well, but didn't really feature an awful lot. So that's why I think Killadangan, while they were comfortable winners, will fully feel that it wasn't maybe a 6 out of 10 performance. They know they need 7, 8, 9 out of 10 against Borrisoleigh to have a chance of winning.
And Shane, like if any player really wants to get on Liam Cahill's radar, and Billy Seymour is one you've been talking about there, heading away for J1s and what have you isn't exactly the way to get on the radar. So you really do want to put your head down if you have any hope of getting called in later in the year. Yeah,
you have to commit. And like I was just talking to somebody yesterday, and we were chatting about the Borrisoleigh game. I suppose we're moving on to that James Devaney really has. James Devaney was very good last weekend. He scored 4 points in play, but I thought his attitude, his work rate, his leadership, his hunger for getting up and down the field. Like I would have said, that was the thing that was holding him back. Like we all know he's underage pedigree, brilliant finisher, but I always thought, has he the application and the work rate to go to the highest level? And maybe a few years ago he was taking things for granted, but like I was told that even in training now, club training, that Devaney the penny has started to drop with him a small bit, and like he's very good. If he wants to get in with Tip, he's got to put a shoulder. Like he's 21 now. Maybe go like time is. I wouldn't say time is running out, but if you're not going to be, if you're not going to be noticed at 21, 22, it's going to be hard to 24, 25 to get noticed. Like so. I think for the likes of him is very good. Eddie Ryan was outstanding centre forward, 15 points, 5 from play. Just linked the play brilliantly. Just found those little pockets of space. And look, while Niall O'Mara was very, very prominent for Kilruane at centre back, Ryan was able to find those little pockets. And if he wasn't scoring himself, he was bringing others into play. Like overall, I thought it was the best game of the weekend by a long shot. Like 26 points to 23, really good game. Like some brilliant scores of both sides. Probably lacked a small bit in terms of intensity. Like good, but there was a good pace to the game. Both sides, even Kilruane in defeat, I think would have been pretty happy with their level of performance for the first game of the year, first championship game of the year. Jerome Cahill, excellent again. And I just look at him and think, God, he's our Cian Lynch, lads. He's Tip's Cian Lynch if he put on a Tip jersey. He just sees things different. He was incredible. Craig Morgan, very, very good at centre forward, sort of a floating role around the middle. Aaron Morgan, very, very good midfield. 4
I wanted to see Aaron Morgan getting the call last year. I think he's got promise.
I just thought he looks athletically a lot stronger this year. I thought the speed which he covered around was excellent. He has been in with the Tip extended panel this year, and you could sort of see that bit of extra in him this year. In terms of bit stronger, a bit fitter. And like I definitely I think he'll be in the Tip setup next year. I just think he has the physical and definitely the mental focus. Like especially look like Craig, they nearly go to a brick wall, those Morgans, and definitely type of player that Liam Cahill will be looking at. That I think he'll be looking at guys with a bit of mental toughness, maybe over a bit of sleeky skills in terms of new guys to come into the panel.
Yeah, Hurling1234 says, would you put Jerome Cahill at 11 for Tip? You'd certainly like to be able to consider him there.
Or if he made himself available, you'd put him anywhere. Like so.
Yeah. Anywhere from probably. Actually, you could even try him as a wing back. I'm sure he'd be very good there as well. But you could try him anywhere.
Just a guy, just a name. Maybe just I didn't mention my report, but I gave him a great rating on in my ratings was Colin Boyle, a cornerback for Bursley, really good. More of a wing back. He did a man marking job, and Keane Darcy held him to 2 points in play. So like he was maybe one of the lesser lights for Bursley that they need to. I suppose particularly with Ray McCormack not there, James McCormack is gone. Paddy McCormack didn't play at the weekend, carrying a bit of a knock. But Colin Boyle very, very good, and like just Bursley look like they're a different animal this year. I just thought maybe the high profile management of Shane O'Neill and just the style he was trying to get them to play just last year just didn't suit them. I think they've gone back to basics under Philip Maher, a style of hurling that suits them. They're comfortable on the ball, but they do like to try and get the ball in, move the ball quicker. And I thought they definitely look like a team happier playing that style last weekend.
Yeah, and you mentioned James McCormack, who was the goalkeeper for the last few years, gone away. And Jody Harkin, who was goalkeeper about 15 or 20 years ago, he's gone back in. And I bumped into him a couple of weeks ago, and I was asking him about my old midfield partner for playing soccer for Bursley back in the day. But he had a hamstring injury. He was back in again. And like, it's funny the way, whatever, 15, 20 years ago, he's back in there again. So he's a safe pair of hands normally.
He is, and for a guy who the last few years has been probably more of an outfield sub, and he good distributor, like his puck outs were pretty good. Like he didn't have a save to make. Kilruane had only one good goal chance in the first half. Jerome Cahill was just inches wide, and Bursley were full value for the win. Like they had 3 good goal chances, but Connor Doheny in the Kilruane goal made 3 very, very good saves. So like on the balance of that, those saves, and maybe the fact that they were always that little bit noses in front of that Bursley were full value for the win, even though Kilruane played their part in it, I say, in a very, very good game.
And then what about Nina against Toomevara? Is there any player that really stood out for you that impressed above all others?
Sure, look, you think a guy who has the ability nearly to take over a game at club level is Jake Morris, like 7 points to play at the weekend. Like he just looks in the form of, he just looks like a player. I think he has the potential to be our own Cody, but you've got to feed him. Like, and I do wonder, like, I go back to that Galway match, like played too far away from goal. I think you've got to play him inside. And like we did see in the last 20 minutes against Galway, when they played him inside and he was breaking out from the full forward line, like he looked more, he got on the ball, he won a few frees. He did hit a poor wide, I get that, but at least he was getting on the ball in more threatening positions in that last 20 minutes against Galway. And then again, definitely against Toom, like they played him close to goal, and it's like 7 points. Every time he got the ball, he actually didn't even have to have a look at the goal to know where the posts or whether it was 20 yards out or 65 yards. I thought he was excellent. Look, I thought it was a very, very even game for a lot of it, but you could see Nina, as the match was going on, were just gelling that little bit more. Both sides probably a little bit rusty as well, but Nina probably gelled that a little bit better. Interesting for me was Paddy Murphy, who we all know as a half forward, full forward, back in the half back line now this year. And I suppose new position for him, but I suppose was very, very solid back there. Barry Heffern in centre back, pretty good. Interesting for me, with 15 minutes to go when the match was in the fire, Michael Cleary decided Barry was going up centre forward, and he won some big balls. So like that was interesting for me when the game was tight.
Him and Craig Morgan going into the half forward line, what's going on?
But like to make a decision centre forward at that stage, I think, and he wasn't having a poor game back in defence by any means, but they were brave enough to say Barry's going to go up there. We need a ball winner. He won a couple of big balls, and it was enough to get them over the line. So Conor Hennessy's work rate on the wing was excellent. He's another with that type of style tail off, and he's also able to score. So he's maybe another one to look for. Tumivara, I think, disappointed to lose. Shane Nolan, centre forward, is excellent. 4 points of play. Really, really good game. Just probably didn't have enough of a scoring threat overall to get through. But like, just want to make bring up the save Dermot McTiernan made in the Nina goal with a minute to go. Like, unbelievable. Like, close range shot from I think it was Mark McCarthy, and he touched it over the crossbar. Not as good as Owen Murphy's, but wasn't far off. And a really brilliant save in the last minute of normal time.
And by the way, there's loads of coverage in the Nina Guardian as well, including the intra-county and the camogie there. So make sure you pick up a copy of that because it's in shops now. The Premier Intermediate quarterfinals were also on. Newport beat Ballina 23 points to 114, and Burgess had a 2-goal win over Silvermines 319 to 119. Anything in particular stand out there for you?
I suppose there were probably wins that were probably they went according to, I suppose, the favourites tag. Newport were sluggish enough in the first half against Ballina. There were a couple of points down at half time. Probably should have been further behind. Ballina missed an awful lot of chances, but Newport came good in the last quarter. Colin Floyd, 13 points, 7 from play. He's another one I think has the raw tools to be inter-county. I think if he fills out, he's about 6'1", rangy. I think if you put a bit of work into him, there's a player there. So, like, they made it through. They're playing Burgess in the semi-final this Sunday. Burgess 319 to 119 wins over Silvermines. I thought they were comfortable enough winners, or Silvermines made a late push. Got it back to 4 points at one stage. But I thought Burgess, I physically and athletically, I thought Burgess were impressive. They look like a team like who got to the semi-final last year and lost to Ross Gray, and I said, lads, we have a great chance of kicking on this year. Fit, they look very, very fit, very sharp. Stephen Kerwin is back. They've given Dunamaher sort of a free role, sort of anywhere between midfield and the half forward line. And of course, in the last few minutes, if you're holding on to a lead, you bring him back. So like, he was very, very good. So like, that'll be a good the semi-final on Sunday. And the other semi-final is Lura and Portrue on Saturday. So I know I'll be shouting for anyway because I've been one of the sidelines. So like, they're two very even semi-finals. And just the fixtures for the senior semi-finals, Tipperary are playing Nina on Saturday at 5 in Clough-Jordan, and Bursley and Kildangan is at 4 on Sunday in Dala. So like, particularly for Bursley and Kildangan on Sunday, they're playing in the group stage of the county championship, and that group also contains Thurles and Clonalty. So like, a divisional title and a back door to the county knockout stage with that in that group is very important. And like, you're probably looking at Clonalty will be favourites to win the West, so they probably will maybe have a ticket in their back pocket. Thurles, you'll always say they have a chance in the mid, even though I looked at Lockmore scoring 230 against Drummond Inch last weekend. You think they must be purring a bit this year, and they did that without John Maher, who's away for this year, but Kieran Connolly is nearing a return, and Ed Connolly's back from he missed all last year as well. Like, so like, I think, geez, I think Lockmore will take beating this year. I just think if they still have a core group of brilliant players. Like, at this stage, like 230 against Drummond Inch is fair scoring. Like, it maybe it was a little loose and maybe lacked intensity, but there's a lot of work in scoring 230.
Well, will you put your neck on the block with the two North semi-finals then? Kildangan against Borris and, as you said, Nina against Templary.
I'm going for Nina against Templary. I just think Nina having the game under their belt, Templary coming in cold. But I think it probably will maybe the difference. Templary were poor last year in the North semi-final against Nina. They were beaten by 17 points. I think it'll be much closer this time, but I think Nina will be too strong. And just on the basis of what I saw last weekend, I've given Bursley the edge over Kildangan. But I think it's just purely on what I saw last weekend. But I do think Kildangan will perform an awful lot better because they'll have to. Wouldn't be surprised if they edged it, but just from purely on what I saw last weekend, Bursley is favourites for me.
You see, now you're giving Kildangan a cause. They wrote us off, I'm not too pleased with that now, Shane, I have to say.
That's it. So it'll be hanging in the dressing room and all. I must sneak in around 3 o'clock and see what's on the dressing room wall.
So, as mentioned there, like Lockmore obviously beating Drum. Thurles Sarsfields, they dethroned JK Brackens as well. And then Holy Cross, Ballycahill beat Mike Harkey Burst after extra time as well. So there's good hurling going on across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose Thurles expected to win, but like Brackens, Paddy Cadell is injured, Connor Cadell is in America, David O'Shea is away. It's like that they don't have the depth of panel yet, Brackens, to cope with those losses. But then expected win for Thurles. Big win for Upperchurch, Holy Cross. Like I think Holy Cross are the team that are going to come in the next few years. And I always thought that this was a game of two clubs on the same level that are both probably have better days coming, and who was going to get the springboard first. And I think Holy Cross have got it. They gave up a big lead in a normal time, and then they go out and score 3 goals in extra time. So that shows me like that their fitness levels are probably good. They'll be underdogs against Thurles Sarsfields this Saturday in the mid-semi-final, but they'll know they have nothing to lose, and they'll be able to get a serious barometer this weekend and maybe of where they stand. And they're in a county championship group that's very, 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 very progressible for them in terms of finishing the top 2. So, I think that's the key game. You have Lockmore playing Upperchurch on Sunday in the other semi-final. So, Upperchurch coming in cold. I think they've moved on from their coach, Shawnee Tobin, in the last 2 weeks. So that's probably not a good look for them. So you probably fancy Lockmore. Saturday evening, you have the West final, Clonoulty against Cashel. Clonoulty put up a big score against Anacarty last week. And you just think that the Dylan Quirk factor this weekend, and I'm sure that every time they go out in the field, they're going to be so motivated. So I fancy them to win that. And the South finals on Sunday, Killinall against the Swan. I'm sure you saw the footage of the Swan goal last weekend, like the haymaker of a puck out, wind behind them, like just a freak, like you would say, talent wise, Killinall gets them goal. I have sneaking suspicion that the Swan will win it again. Like, they're defending champions, and whatever the South Championship, they're always up for. Like, and they do seem to lose a bit of focus for the county stage, but the sight of those Killinall jerseys, they'll be ready for them on Sunday.
Okay, well, that's it from the show this week. We'll be back again next Wednesday. Shane, take it handy, and we'll chat to you then.
Cheers.